Are we too dumb for democracy? In Too Dumb for Democracy, David Moscrop tells readers about how we make political decisions, why we make bad ones, and why it matters. He clarifies that a good political decision does not revolve around the outcome, but around the process of coming to the decision. The process must be fair and legitimate, and the people must come to their conclusion through rationality and autonomy. So unfortunately, coming to a good political decision does not come easily, because the human brain and the external environment do not create the ideal conditions to facilitate good political decision making. To illustrate, political parties use their campaigns to appeal to our emotional brains in order to win our votes instead of providing us with essential information to make our decisions. The media is supposed to act as a gatekeeper of information, providing citizens with information and keeping politicians accountable, but will instead run their own agendas by manipulating how that information is presented. New technology algorithms on social media will show you what they think that you want to see, adhering to confirmation bias. Capitalism creates a view of individualism that separates our thinking from what is best for the group to what is best for me, the individual. On top of all this, the fast-paced way that we live leaves us with less time to make decisions, an overwhelming amount of information, too many choices, deep and persistent disagreement on how things ought to be, and issues that take a lot of time to process and understand. To get past our shortcomings, we need to build a more inclusive, participatory, just, and diverse democracy that is built to last. At this point in time, we are relying on elected officials and institutions to do the work for us. This is not working, as we are constantly being manipulated by our external environment. In order to take control of our future, we must increase participation, and to achieve this, we require enough time, money, and skill to make participation possible and effective, so that our interests are truly represented in the government. On top of that, we must continually renew the motivation and practice being aware of all the factors going into our decisions. We must become involved within the societal issues and think more deeply about how to combat the manipulation. Institutions must also change so that they bring slowness, abundance of time, equality, and deep diversity. This might entail mandatory voting, time off work to vote, participatory budgeting, and many other solutions. But by creating just small changes, Moscrop says that we can use this to empower citizens to demand further changes in the future, adapting and reworking democracy as required in order to make it better. Contrary to our beliefs, historical problems that we have seen in Roman and Greek democracy are not behind us. We must continually work at our institutions so that they grow with us and don't hold us back. And I wholeheartedly agree with Moscrop that we do need to change ourselves, and his solutions are valid in theory, but are they truly realistic? I personally feel motivated after reading his book to be more thorough in my political decision making, but according to Moscrop, 87% of the population is uninformed and therefore more unlikely to be trusting of democracy and even less likely to participate in it. So Moscrop asks that we completely change our decision-making process, and it is unlikely that such a significant amount of people will be willing to do the work. On top of that ask, the politicians and the media are not likely to support this change, and it is much easier for them to get what they want by having an audience that they can manipulate. These groups of people are also in charge of presenting information to the public, so widespread presentation of this empowering information is not likely to occur. Finally, as mentioned in the book, people get their information from sources that they trust, which furthers confirmation biases. So what are the chances that they would find this source of empowerment without it being put in front of their faces by the media and the sources that they trust? Humans are far from perfect. A common vice that is found within the human population is procrastination. We resort to procrastination most often because of fear. When faced with change and unpredictability, we become incredibly uncomfortable, so we make excuses to avoid big changes at all costs, and hope that if we wait long enough, our situations will improve themselves. So we put off change for as long as we can and do our best to avoid meaningful action. Unfortunately, it's generally the case that problems do not fix themselves and will likely get worse over time. But maybe this unsuccessful attempt to defer action will make us come to the realization that procrastination doesn't work and create motivation to do something about it. After we begin our journey as good decision makers, we will likely hit a roadblock. Many people do not know how to sustain their motivation when they're faced with a problem and when they feel like the cards are stacked against them. And as we have seen in Moscrop's research, the odds are certainly not in our favor. Another challenge is that for most of us, being good political decision makers is not our day job. We often prioritize jobs, our families, and other immediate concerns in our lives over the big picture thinking involved with political decision making. Who we are biologically and psychologically puts us at a disadvantage, and the media and politicians are aware of this and take advantage of our vulnerability. We know that the media can make more money with more viewers, so this creates an incentive to gain more viewers. And how can they attract them? Viewers can be attracted by shocking stories or information that confirms their prior beliefs. So similar to politicians like Trump, the media can forego rationality completely in order to trigger the emotional brain to get a larger response from viewers. People will also be more likely to view a certain channel to get their information if they provide information that assists them in confirmation bias. So when presented with conflicting evidence to our prior beliefs, people are discomforted and would prefer to dismiss the information and isolate themselves from contradictions. With social media, this is made even more possible with algorithms that show you content based on what they think that you will want to see. And this will close people off from diverse information that they don't want to see, even though it would make them come to a better political decision. So politicians also find themselves in a position where the most important objective is to win, and this doesn't necessarily mean that they have to play fair. Political campaigns often use framing, agenda setting, and priming to influence voters to vote for them. A prime example is President Donald Trump, who has made 280 often conflicting promises during his campaign, and during his first 100 days in office, told 492 false or misleading claims. Through ignorance and the media, Trump's followers came to believe whatever he said. Additionally, politicians like to use vague statements that allow you to fill in the blanks with wishful thinking and what you want to hear. So recall Trump's "Make America Great Again." What does that mean? Trump leaves you to decide what it should mean through wishful thinking, while in the meantime he'll make decisions that abolish gun-free zones at schools and cancels payments towards UN global warming programs. So this shows that there's been little to no effort in being informative during campaigns, and since this is how politicians succeed, it's unlikely to change. So as we can see, with all the factors of today's world, when implementing Mosscrop solutions, the odds are stacked against us. Both psychologically and biologically, we are unfit for the duty to make political decisions, and our external environment increases the difficulty to do so. The institutions that we have created to overcome our challenges with decision-making often fail to do this for us. So if we are to have any chance of creating an environment that would make good political decision-making possible, large changes would need to be made in both ourselves as well as the institutions that govern our way of life. So due to the unlikeliness of humankind committing to changing their decision-making process and the improbable change of the media and politicians' tactics, it's unlikely that we will be able to facilitate any change in our democratic system at all. So the question lies, are we too dumb for democracy? The evidence seems to suggest that this is the case. Therefore, Mosscrop's suggestions are unlikely to be implemented successfully.